Thursday, February 19th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is the Geeknights Book Club. Tonight, Ernest Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms.
Let's do this.
So I've got The Judging Eye.
Eyeball.
It's, so far, there's a lot of judging going on.
A lot of eyes?
Not so many eyes, but lots of judging.
Well, I mean, it only does mention one eye. It's not the judging eyeballs.
Yeah, but...
it's not the judging,
there are quite a few... This is a book, and Alex said
something... Is there
something...
a Cyclops in it?
Not yet. But he said something like this in the forums, and now that I've read quite a bit of the book already, but the first few pages pretty much let you in on how awesome it is. I mean, if you've read the Prince of Nothing trilogy and you were waiting for the next book, you had expectations. I mean, we all knew it's about Drusus Acamian 20 years after the last books ended, and that's not a spoiler because throughout the entire Prince of Nothing series, you keep getting quotes from a book that Acamian wrote in the future.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that could be a spoiler.
Unless it's an unreliable text.
Except that's never been the case.
No, it hasn't.
Not in this book, at least. These books. But anyway, it starts out, it hits you right over the head with something pretty awesome. And then it just gets better and better and better. And right away, it starts out with, like, the Persian run-up to the invasion of Greece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but the first books were kind of like Crusade. This one is like Persia. It's pretty cool.
All right.
But more importantly, the part that I feel is very noteworthy is that our Scott Backer has done something unprecedented. He has made a strong female character.
What?
She comes in right away. She's got a sword. She's out in the wilderness. She's badass. She's the kind of person Luke Crane would hate.
Actually, that reminds me in the Mouse Guard RPG. It's like, are you the troubled loner? If so, -1.
Not just that, the troubled loner who's cool and collected and doesn't rely on anyone.
Yep. It's like -1 to you. It's basically the I don't like you rule.
But I expect to be done with this book, I don't know, by Sunday.
Yeah. One thing about the book, I didn't read it yet, right? And I'm glad it has the same graphic design as the other one, so it fits in. But I guess it'd be a spoiler to say what it's a new trilogy. It's not Prince of Nothing Book 4. It's something else Book 1. And I think that's not really the best idea because if you didn't read Prince of Nothing 1, 2, 3, I don't think this book is going to work.
See, at the same time, it kind of does because it starts out with the same level of what the fuck that the original Prince of Nothing did.
Yeah.
And it gives you the history, and it does the same kind of referencing things with proper nouns consistently in such a way that if you're smart, you figure it all out.
Yeah, but I just don't, I can't imagine how the book could be if it was the first one you read.
Plus, Scott, a lot of things do that. I mean, Hyperion, Endymion.
Yeah, you couldn't read, I don't think you could read Fall of Hyperion without reading Hyperion first.
Plus, I don't get the impression that you're supposed to.
Yeah. It just seems wrong.
How does it seem wrong? It basically picks up 20 years later and tells it's kind of like Death Note 2 and the second half of Death Note,
which also makes no sense if you didn't read the first half.
Yeah, but they called that Death Note 2.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Whatever.
But there's some similarities that are surprising, and I don't think they were intended, but they kind of stand out because I've read both of these things. But yeah, strong female character, kind of surprising, kind of cool, -1 to circles.
Yeah, so we've decided, if you haven't noticed, to sort of change the book club episode schedule. I think the original schedule was supposed to be like every fourth Thursday episode. So book club, Thursday, book club, right?
Primarily, we just didn't keep track.
Yeah. Well, I kept track. We actually kept to that schedule for until right now. And I could check. Maybe we did keep to the schedule. I don't think so, though. But basically, we decided that was too long because now we're doing only 2 episodes a week, so there's half as many Thursdays, so there were half as many books. I mean, that would be like one book, that would be like 6 books a year at the most, right? That wasn't going to work out. And so the new schedule, we're not doing it every Thursday, right? But the new schedule is when we finish reading the book. So
Now, I want to preface that by pointing out that we didn't actually get the book until a little while ago.
yeah, so that doesn't mean, I mean, we read faster than a lot of people out there. So it would be sort of unfair if we announce the next book, started reading, we'd be doing every Thursday.
Well, it doesn't
'cause
help that we have these train commutes. I mean, I get a novel and I just read it every day until I'm done with it.
I know, right? So, we take our sweet time getting the book. We take our sweet time, starting to read it. But once we start to read it, it gets done
It
real
sounds
quick.
like you're trying to make excuses almost. Like you're trying to
No, I'm
rationalize.
not trying to make excuses. I'm trying to not frighten the listeners away and have them pissed off because they read slowly.
But that's very much the rationalization. I'll paraphrase.
What are you talking about? That's actually what I'm trying to do.
I will paraphrase what you said into the terms that a non-Kellis would hear. I'm so awesome that I apologize to you for the fact that I am, in fact, so much more awesome than you are. I will enumerate the ways in which I am awesome, while all the same while making sure that you feel bad about not being nearly so awesome as I am. Allow me to reiterate how awesome I am.
Wow, your translation was so accurate. It was, in fact, 100% accurate. But basically, I think that's the ongoing problem with the book club, is that the goal is to make people read a book. Read a book. Right? But people don't. So we could, if we just, sort of threw them in the pool, just like tossed them off the high dive, and said, well, you don't read at all, do you? No, you don't. Start reading exactly the way we read. Read real quickly and read really hard books and get everything and comprehend them almost 100% on the first go. People wouldn't be able to do it, and they wouldn't like these episodes. They wouldn't get anything out of them, and they wouldn't read the books. That's why I picked Earthsea, because it was a good book, but it's also an easy book. And, that's why we want to give people enough time to read, to not be scared away, but we also don't want to read so slowly that, the episodes just never come out ever. So the new schedule is we finish the books. We will read the book and finish it, and then the next Thursday after that, we will do the episode.
All right.
But there will be at least one non-book club Thursday in between each. So you'll never get 2 book club episodes in a row. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, of course, Thursdays are kind of up in the air anyway, so we can do whatever on a Thursday.
We're also having trouble with Thursday episodes lately.
I got plenty. I got a lot in the hopper.
All right, Mr. Hopper.
I got a hopper.
Mr. Hooper.
But anyway, let's just get right into this with things of the day. So, way back at RIT, I can't recall exactly when.
RIT.
I can't recall if it was a Telecaster or a Stratocaster. But I do remember that at one point, Scott made a joke that apparently it revealed the fact that only myself...
You're making that your thing of the day.
Yes, I'm making that my thing of the day.
It's the news, not a thing of the day.
No, it's worth being the thing of the day. But it revealed to me that only myself and the 2 Scotts, the Reuben and the Johnson, had actually seen 2010, the movie, or read the book, or knew anything about it.
A lot of people don't even know it exists. They don't realize. Like, people know if you say 2001: A Space Odyssey,
they go, yeah, that movie with the
and the monolith. It's like and HAL 9000,
Thus
famous
Zarathustra.
Yeah, famous movie, right? But they don't know it had like a sequel 2010 and another sequel. It was like 20 or some other number that was bigger than 2010. But, the thing is, I've never read the books, but I've seen the first 2 movies, 2001 and 2010. And at the end of 2010, it says...
Wait. So we're sitting around. I believe it was over a Krispy Kreme. I believe that is when the comment was made. Because as I recall, someone said something like... Take anyone you want, but don't take the Boston cream. That one's mine. And Scott looks up and says, all these can be yours, except Europa. And the other Scott and I crack up, and everyone else looks at him like, what the fuck?
No one got my joke.
And I thought it was brilliant. It became a meme in the crew.
Yeah, pretty
but
much.
Only 2, me and the 2
Pretty
Scotts.
much anytime anyone ever said, pick any one of these, or, take anyone you want, or anything like that, I made the Europa joke. I was like, except Europa. And then I even made a Photoshop, a GIMP, of, I took the old man from Zelda 1 who says, take anyone you want. He's got the heart container and the red potion.
And Europa.
And I just added in Europa, and I wrote, except Europa.
Now, of course, if you haven't seen the movie, you might be, yes, this is a joke.
At the end of
movie.
2010, basically, the message is at the end of the movie, and you'll understand why there's a message if you watch the movie. But the message is, all these planets are yours, except Europa. Attempt no landing there.
Yep, use them together, use them in peace. It's a very uplifting, if slightly cheesy ending to that movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it turns out that humanity has doomed itself because we are now sending a mission to Europa.
Well, we are not attempting landing.
Yes, so I guess we'll on a technicality, we got to hope that the all-intelligent aliens...
The thing is, in reality, Europa's a big ball of ice. So, really, I'm not worried.
Honestly.
Really? It's not troubling.
So, this article was posted on Slashdot, which I go to more and more because Slashdot is becoming the Byzantium of the internet.
It's strange. It's like all the people who are just filling Slashdot with crap left and went to Dig and other places, right? And Slashdot gets the news a lot slower than it used to, and it's not what it used to be, but it's still it's still big enough.
Gray man, she ain't what she used to be. Ain't what she used to be.
It's still big enough to carry on with momentum. But the thing is, the comment sections. It's actually, because if you think about it, other sites have comment moderation like Dig and such and Fark kinda, but it's not like Slashdot. Slashdot's moderation is still where it's at, and because a lot of the people have left Slashdot and don't care about it anymore, the news is old, but the comments are like the best comments ever.
But it really is, for me now, in terms of posting on the internet, like Byzantium. And I guess our forum is like, I don't know. I'm not going to extend that metaphor any further, but it lost some of its former glory. But it's still there, still plugging, and all these other states sprung up around it like Dig, but they're all crap and full of barbarians.
Yep.
And they collapse. I mean, Dig collapsed under its own weight. It's a useless garbage site now, as far as I'm concerned.
I haven't been to Dig in
it's
a long time.
It is Dig at this point, in my opinion, is worthless. It is absolute garbage. It provides nothing new, nothing interesting. I'd rather read YouTube comments than read the comments on Dig. But Slashdot has maintained. It's like this walled garden, and
that's if you're looking to read comics. If you're looking for comments, if you're looking for the actual news, sites.
Fark still reliably has
Google
the news.
Engadget, sites like that can give you the news.
Yep, and Kotaku will give you the funny, and BB Spot surprisingly still has good thing of the day-ish things. But I want to point out that on Slashdot, this was announced. Europa selected as target of next flagship mission.
And of course, the first comment is something about...
The first post is, all these worlds are yours, except Europa.
Yep.
Attempt no landing there.
There you go.
The second post, which made me laugh out loud. First post together, first post in peace. I'm so proud of you, Slashdot.
Yeah, see, that's quality.
I mean, the first
right
post on Dig would just be like some gibberish about chiropractic conspiracies from the other side of Ron Paul's ass. Attempt no landing there.
I plan not to attempt landing.
Well, perhaps with a boot.
That wouldn't be a landing. That would be more of a crash.
An impact of some kind?
Yes.
All right, that's all I've got. That's my thing of the day.
All right, so check this out. Somebody is making an independent movie, right? And it's going to be in theaters and on DVD and the whole thing. It's a real deal film production. It's not some joke. It's not some, amateur YouTube thing. This is a real deal indie movie. It's not a real deal blockbuster, but it's a real deal indie movie, right? And you can contribute to this movie. You who is listening to this show, you can, if you want to, contribute to this movie in some way. All you have to do is go to the website and read. And I don't really need to tell you what the movie's about, because if I tell you the title of the movie, which has already been decided, and by the way, it's a documentary, you will know everything you need to know. The name of the movie is The People versus George Lucas, and the website, I think, is like People versus... There's going to be a link to the website on our site, so you're all set.
Yes, once, a long time ago, we got an email from a listener who, it was one of those long emails, like the email that's like, long time listener, first time emailer, all that rigmarole.
It's like, really, I didn't know that.
But I remember very clearly that this person pointed out to us that it was often difficult to hear the names of websites and URLs in the podcast. And I was like, have you ever been to our website? And they responded with the best response I've ever gotten from someone like that. 3 characters. OH period. Oh.
Yeah, if you're someone who found this podcast through iTunes and you subscribe to it in iTunes and you've never been to our website,
it's a crappy WordPress that's going to be replaced by the awesome beta site that isn't out yet.
Yeah, but go to frontrowcrew.com. Oh, look, I said a URL in the show while talking about saying URLs in the show.
Actually, I surprised someone at work the other day. I was on the phone with some guy from Verizon, circuit thing, and he wanted the circuit ID, so I just gave it to him in the NATO phonetic. Yeah. He was taken aback, 1, by the fact that I did it so quickly, and 2, by the fact that he couldn't keep up with it. Yeah. I was kind of saddened by that.
The IT guy at my who they got rid of, Big Mike at my work. He used to
Mike.
Yeah.
Big Mike, is that like Mitch?
How many Mikes there were at my actually he was sort of a similar guy to Mitch. He had some similarities to Mitch, but not too many. There were like 5 or 6 Mikes at my work.
Wow.
So he was one of the Mikes, but he's not there
With
anymore.
us, it's Jeffs. We have a million Jeffs, and they all work in the development side, so it's tough because it's like...
what's funny? At my work...
The worst thing is 2 of them are in QA, so it's like, it used to be, I'd be like, so who do you want, Dev Jeff or QA Jeff? And
I think
I'd be like,
I've said
QA
this-
Jeff, and then he's like, there's 2 QA Jeffs, which one?
I think I said this before, but if you don't count the people that acquired us, if you only count, our part of the company, when I got there were like 20-something people there. There are only 5 people who've been at our part of the company longer than me at this point. I've only been there 2 years, and 4 of those 5 people are named Mike.
You've got, I don't know. I could go in a lot of directions with that. I'm just going to let it be.
Yeah.
So, we read a book. I hope you read it.
But anyway, yeah, the IT guy, Mike, he used to always do, the NATO phonetic because he was in the military.
Do you know, the NATO phonetic, do you know it? Do you know the old World War II phonetic, the Abel Baker one?
I don't know the Abel Baker one.
I don't know it either.
Don't they usually, it's a lot, mostly you do Greek letters like Alpha, Bravo.
No, it's Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Ghost, Hotel.
Oh, is it Ghost? All right. See,
I think it's Ghost.
I only know some of them. I know some of them.
Thing is, I only know, inherently and correctly, all the letters that tend to be in circuit IDs with major, internet service
All
providers.
you really need to know is A, B, C, D, E, F, because then you can do hex codes and you can do anything in hex.
But anyway, we read a book. I hope you did.
I read the book.
Now, as we always do with these book clubs, we're going to assume that you have read Ernest Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms. So,
my arms.
If you
That's
have
the
not,
only time I'm making that joke the whole episode.
If you have not, I would recommend. You could listen. We're going to spoil a book where the statute of limitations ran out before I was born.
But we're also going to be very careful, just in case someone assigns you this book for your class in high school or whatever. This episode, we're going to make sure it does not substitute for reading the book. And in fact, we should say some things that are wrong just to throw people off so they'll get bad grades on their tests if they try to listen instead of reading.
A Farewell to Arms is a sequel to a book called Old Man in the Sea. It's about a man who is a fisherman. Now, he loses his arms in a horrible fishing accident and then gets sent to World War I. And this proves difficult because he has no arms.
Okay, that was a little too extreme. Too obvious.
It's bad that I saw that episode of South Park as I was reading this book again. So all I can think when I think of Hemingway is, there's an old man, and he goes out into the sea to get some fish, but he cannot get the fish.
No, he cannot get the fish.
And then he get the fish, but then the shark eat the fish, and he has no fish.
Yeah. So, Rim, how many Hemingways have you read?
I've read most of his short stories, and I've read A Farewell to Arms and At Least the Sun Rises.
You mean The Sun Also Rises?
Yes, I made my joke. The joke I always make.
I read Old Man in the Sea and The Sun Also Rises. This is my number 3 Hemingway.
Wow, this was actually my first Hemingway. It's interesting. I never
read this before. I've only read it once, and I finished it last night.
It's interesting. I read it when I was pretty young, and I thought I got it, and I liked it. And then I was assigned it in school, and it was like, oh, Once again, a book I've already read. How wonderful.
Well, just to talk about Hemingway in general, right? First of all, the obviousness, right, is that he has very simple prose. He doesn't use lots of big words. He doesn't use lots of complex sentences.
It's a very distinct style that I like.
He doesn't use lots of punctuation.
Now, coming from Captain Semicolon, you might be surprised that I like Hemingway's prose, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't say
Well,
it's...
I mean, it's functional. It works.
Not only that, but I would say it puts you in a different mindset when you read a Hemingway versus like The Prince of Nothing or Hawthorne. I mean, Hawthorne is just, 4 paragraphs of allusion to describe the color of the letter on someone.
It also really helps because that's part of the reason I was able to burn through the book so fast and get it done in time for the episode.
Yep.
The other thing about Hemingway is that it's very manly.
Now, in high school, if you're in high school, they're going to make you read Farewell to Arms, or I expect they will, because it seems
or something along one of the Hemingway.
Either
They're going to
that-
make you read Hemingway at some point.
Yes, but most people I know read Farewell to Arms in high school. I ended up, my high school actually assigned The Sun Also Rises, but they always will talk about the code hero, the Hemingway code hero. In this book, they always talk about how, well, the main character wasn't the code hero this time. He wanted to be. He was on the cusp of it, but he wasn't truly. And the girl was the code hero. And this is a big upstart, and she's more modern, progressive. And they always say code hero, code hero. And if you read the Cliff's Notes, they'll probably say something like, the code hero was, and name a character, and then they'll list like the bullet points of what a code hero was.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to call them the Hemingway hero, much like the Gekiga hero. Now, Hemingway
How
hero...
does that relate to, what's it called? That manga? The Ikigami manga? Which one is that?
I really want... Hemingway hero has good alliteration. I feel like it's a much better way to put forth the idea than the code hero. But I digress. It is interesting, though, high school aside, that Catherine was the Hemingway hero of this, and the main character wasn't at all. He was sentimental, and he cared, and he couldn't really deal with it, and of course, he did drink a lot.
Well, I mean, I was actually surprised because, in Sun Also Rises, they fucking drink. It's like they're in Spain drinking wine by the bottle, right?
Yeah, I remember I didn't notice like the extent of that until it was in high school, and a teacher pointed out, she diagrammed all that they had drunk in one scene.
I remember very distinctly when I read that. I read Sun Also Rises for school, and I was like, I was reading, and like one of the early chapters, like they went to a bar, and it was like, yeah, it's like, X bottles. And I'm like, well, do they just call it bottles or something? And it's like, no, really, they're actually drinking entire bottles instead of glass. Where normal people would drink a glass, they drink an entire bottle per person. I'm like, yeah, there's something going on here. You're just getting wasted.
But Farewell to Arms, it's more, the drinking kind of accelerates throughout the book. I mean, the point where he gets jaundice, and I point out that is right after he finds out Catherine's pregnant, and it kind of subtly implies, Hemingway implies a lot, and there are implications that perhaps he is drinking more because of the fact that she is pregnant and he can't deal with it.
Yeah, it's like you never really see like what the people are thinking. All you see is what they're doing and what they're saying, kind of, and the everything else is implied.
And that, like, some of my favorite scenes, like the scene, there's a couple of times, especially early on, where Catherine and Henry have sex, and it is never stated. There is no, and then he had sex with her sentence. There's no like description. There's no anything. There is just a series of dialogue between the two characters, and everything else is implied 100%. There is nothing to tell you what is going on in a lot of scenes other than the fact that the dialogue hints at it.
Mm-hmm.
And that really puts you in a different mindset from the typical novel that you're reading. I mean, there's no scene, there's no nothing. There's just two characters kind of having this pretty realistic, like terse conversation while they are doing something.
Yep. And actually, I think because, the only way you really get to know any of the characters is through their dialogue, right? And I think that actually, the number one strength of the book is that how how deep and how fleshed out the characters are. Like they feel like real people, like people or someone like that, or you can really imagine what the people are like. Especially like Rinaldi, he's a big character.
Yep.
Right, the funny guy.
He's like almost a Hemingway hero.
Yeah, but it's like the only way you can, tell what the people are like is because you see them talk. Like the way Rinaldi talks is how you know he's like the funny guy.
Hey, baby, come on, have a drink with me, baby. Are you all right? Baby.
Yes, he's a funny Italian guy. He's having a good time. Yes,
He's having a good time in a way.
Well, it's that stereotypical Italian guy way.
It's
right?
like he's got his own masculinity.
Yep. But, and it's sort of like you get to know the characters in the book, not through some description like, oh, this guy, he was, some sort of third party saying, oh, yeah, that guy loved to get drunk and get with the women. And he was, real loose, but inside he was. No, it's you get to know them by what they say. And it's as if you met them in real life and you get to know them the way you get to know a person in real life. You talk to them.
It's weird how you get this kind of duality where on one hand, Hemingway, he pulls you into this first person perspective at times where if you imagine yourself as the character, you're experiencing, because it'll shift between long sequences of just dialogue character A, dialogue character B, or long sequences of dialogue where you can't even always tell who is saying what.
Yeah, sometimes, because usually, the what's it called? The way you're supposed to do it is you put a character turn when you change people who are talking, right? But sometimes it'll throw you off. Like there'll be a paragraph and then there'll be some talking, and it's like, wait, which one is who? And then you have to figure it out,
but
and then go back and look at the alternation. But
you don't usually have to figure it out because it's almost always obvious, or it didn't matter. Like it's a whole bunch of soldiers talking, and someone says something, he's making fun of the priest. The priest says something, it's obvious it's the priest saying something, and then every time it comes back to your man talking, you know him because he's the only character you have a different perspective on. You get his autobiographical discussion of himself, but you still don't get his thoughts. You don't get into his head. All you get is
you get basically some you get some things that he's thinking, right? Like he'll say, I wished something.
Yes, but it's indirect. It's not what's in his head. It's what he is telling you about what was in his head. Everything is filtered through him. And that is what really makes these that's what I love about Hemingway, and especially about Farewell to Arms.
All right, so what's it actually about? Well, you got this guy. He's a British American, so he's a United States citizen, but he's of British.
He's
descent.
a Hemingway expat.
Yes, he is in Italy during World War I in the Italian army. It doesn't explain how that happened. It just did.
I love his answer. Something like, I got here. I'm here.
Yeah, he's there.
It happened.
He's in the Italian army, and he's a lieutenant, right? But they call him tenente. It actually took me like a minute to realize that tenente was lieutenant. Yeah. Because all the other ranks, they actually say major or colonel, but for lieutenant they say tenente. They use the Italian word.
But the way they use the Italian word too, you always feel like it's being used with affection. But part of that's because everyone likes him because he's a pretty likable guy, and he's stoic and he cares about his friend. He puts himself in danger to help the people around him.
Yep. Basically, he's not like a lieutenant of infantry or bombers or anything like that.
Well, do we really need to? I mean, I'm
just summarizing here,
but we're assuming everyone read it.
Yeah, I know. But I just want to, for the sake of it.
Okay, summarize away.
So, he's the lieutenant of the ambulance. One group of ambulances, they drive out, they bring back a bunch of wounded people. That's what they do. And, war, of course, is to suck. And, things get crappy. But he gets with this woman, this British nurse, basically, who's in one of the hospitals nearby. And then he gets injured, and he's able to spend a lot of time with her. And, hey, spend a lot of time with her while in bed pretty much all day. And then he has to go back to war, and everything sucks. And then he escapes, and then the book is over.
I got to admit, when I was a kid,
I'm giving you the South Park Old Man in the Sea summary.
There was a Ming, and he went out to.
There was a man. He went to the war. He drove the ambulance. He met the lady. He got injured. He met the lady a whole lot more. Then he went back to the war. No lady. But then he ran away from the war and back with the lady. And then the lady, she died. The end.
I got to admit that, when I was reading the book the first time, I appreciate this book a lot more. Just being older and having more perspective.
Yeah, I could definitely. When I was reading it, I was like, wow, if I had read this when I was younger, I wouldn't have gotten anything out of it.
I got a lot
out
of it.
So it's sort of, if you're one of those people, maybe when you were young, you read Hemingway or you assigned it in school and you hated it, maybe, don't discount reading it again now that you're older and wiser, because it takes an adult to sort of get this book.
But I still remember distinctly as a kid, I'm reading this book and it was interesting and it was Hemingway and I knew the deal with Hemingway. So I'm going through it, and the point where the Carbonari come out and are going to shoot him and suddenly he runs away. Like, I remember I read past that part and I got to the end of the chapter and I stopped and I was like, wait a minute, what the fuck? And I went back. It's like, no, he ran away. Oh my God.
It's like because it was so quick. It was like in one sentence was like, he ran out the door, he jumped in the water. And I was trying to imagine, like, how could he possibly jump in the water and make it? And they're like, it was some sort of river, but it wasn't a river. I was like, what the? I didn't get it. But he escaped in the river by, staying underwater as much as he could. And I guess they shot at him, but it didn't hit him. I was trying to imagine that action scene. It didn't really work, but, hey, he got away.
One, guns back then, especially pistols, not that accurate. In fact, that's kind of not really foreshadowed, but it is noted several times up to this point that pistols are not that accurate.
Yeah, pretty much anytime, they're talking about pistols, it's like, I want one that's actually going to work. I want one, that can actually hit something.
But it's weird because on one hand, I love how Rinaldi didn't even want to carry a pistol.
Yeah, and he was practicing with the pistol, and it took him a while because he was very, it's not easy to shoot.
What was the line? I forget. It's something like, actually using the pistol removed any illusion that I would ever be able to use it.
What was it called? They talked about a guy who carried a rifle, even though he was a higher ranking officer, and the reason he carried the rifle was so that he wouldn't look like an officer to the enemy, so they wouldn't go after him.
Well, the thing
but
is,
also he could actually shoot people with it, and he did, and it saved his life.
It's I'm going to assume that you all know the basic history of World War I, but in case you don't, it was a rough war.
Probably, yeah.
Rough is the word I
mean,
would
most
use.
people think about World War I, and they think about, like the Western Front with the trenches in France and Germany, right? That whole area. But they don't really know a lot about the other parts. Like, people don't know about Gallipoli and shit, right? It's not something most people know.
Well, most people don't really even know World War I at all. Like, they know, Archduke Ferdinand assassinated, World War I.
And then it was over, right? And the thing is, there aren't really World War I veterans left. I mean, if there are any, there's like a handful, and that's it. So
actually, FARC, every time a World War I veteran dies, they whip out the hero tag. I don't recall if the last one died or not.
I remember I went to a museum. There was a temporary exhibit, I think, in New Haven with some World War I stuff, and they had some audio interviews with World War I veterans.
Actually, the most fascinating thing I spent, this was a couple weeks ago, I was randomly looking around, and I found this archive of photos from World War I that were colorized by experts, basically, so you could really see it. Because it's weird. Looking at a war like World War I, you always kind of picture it in black and white. Same thing with World War II to a degree. And it almost feels like history, but not real history. It's weird. Like, you don't get that visceral reality that real people were there that hits you until you see it in color, like real color.
I mean, even if I think about like 70s and 80s history, I mean, I was alive in the 80s, but I sort of remember the 80s and sort of like, that sort of grainy, washed out color of like a Polaroid or bad, analog television.
Or 70s is either that ultra saturated or that kind
like
of sepia
Technicolor. Yeah. It's like you remember things in the color of the recording media that we have and not in full real life color.
But seriously, seeing photos of World War I in color is a visceral experience. It really puts you in these kids' places.
Yeah.
And this book in particular, if you don't know much about World War I, it really, really like shows you and gives you a good sense of what it was like to be on that front. I mean, it's Hemingway. He spends a lot of time talking about just the harsh reality of walking down a clogged road.
Yeah, it's like a lot of the stuff in the book doesn't have anything to do with like the main story. It's like you read.
I mean, the main story is just a love story.
Yeah, you read something like, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, right? And pretty much all the words in the book are either poetry. I guess maybe Lord of the Rings wasn't the best example, but they're serving the purpose of telling you the story of, bringing the ring to Mount Doom. Most of the words.
Or it's Tom Bombadil.
Yes, or Tom Bombadil, right? But in this book, most of the words are not serving to tell you the story. They're serving to just show you the world or make tangential points and to show you the war. And they're just, illustrating these scenes to deliver them to you to make you feel them.
But at the same time, these scenes aren't separate. Like there's the base the story of the book, the love story. Guy meets girl, has baby, die, and all that stuff. But there is the separate, I think, equally prominent story of a man who fought in a war. And, there's all that talk, all the different people, the people who fight in the war because they don't know better, the people who don't want to fight in the war, but they're forced to by the people who don't know better, the people who want to fight the war, but they get other people to do it for them. And the fact that no one really wants to actually be in this war.
Yeah, they definitely concentrate on the idea of, if everyone just went home, it would be cool. And then the guy's like, no, you don't want to be invaded. He's like, what? I don't care.
It can't be worse than what I'm going through right now.
Yeah, he's like, why doesn't everyone just go home? And then at some point, everyone does just go home, but it doesn't quite work out that way. And
yeah, but the fact that he doesn't really talk big. Like, he accepts the grumbling of of the people working with him, and he tries to help them out, and he works hard, but he still continues to fight the war. He even shoots that guy who tried to run away.
Yeah.
Right, but
that was kind of weird. It was like, whoa, why are you doing that for?
Because he hadn't given up on it yet. He wasn't free of it. He was still, his farewell to arms, he didn't actually give up until he was forced to.
Yeah.
He was just going to go back and keep doing it. And he didn't really have a revelation. He just kind of realized suddenly that if he didn't try to get away from the war, he was going to die.
Well, it wasn't until the Carbonari guys were going to shoot him that,
Yes, but he didn't have any personal revelation. He just didn't want to die.
Yeah, it's like he was just doing his job. He didn't really, he would like hang out with people who were like against the war, and he'd be like, yeah, the war sucks, but keep it quiet. And then the people would be super for the war, and he'd be like, he was very, it's like all these people around him were very, strong characters in one direction or another, but he was just sort of going along, just staying the course, pretty neutral on most things, just doing his job. Until the point at which they were actually going to kill him is when he said, oh, that's the end of this.
But just the juxtaposition of him killing someone for the sake of a war that he doesn't even care about to him abandoning that war for almost the same reason, basically.
Yeah.
And he never even thinks back to that. He never worries about that. That never bothers him.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't think, he's not really bothered that much by a lot of things. The only things he was really bothered by in the end were like whether Rinaldi had syphilis. He thought about that. And he thought about the priest a little bit, but no one else, he didn't talk about the major, didn't think about him anymore.
I felt bad for that priest. I mean, I'm an atheist, but I felt really bad for him because those soldiers gave him a rough time.
The thing is, he seemed to not mind being a priest, right?
Well, he
but
didn't.
The thing that I felt bad for him was, the main character, he was at the beginning of the book, he gets leave, right? And he goes all around Italy having a good time in all these places, right?
But he doesn't go to Abruzzi.
He goes everywhere except Abruzzi, right? Yeah, right. He doesn't go to the priest's house. He went to visit everyone else's town except for the priest's town. And the priest was like, I told my parents you were coming. They were ready for you to show up, and you didn't show up. And that, to me, I thought it was foreshadowing for later in the book. He would go to Abruzzi and sort of hide out with the priest's family or something like that. That's sort of what I expected, but that didn't happen at all. In fact, we didn't hear much about the priest again after the first part of the book. So that was a surprise.
The one thing I have to say, the scenes at the end, the way this book ends, everyone, it's a Hemingway book. It's gonna end on a downer. That's expected. And
it's an Astro Boy episode. It's gonna end on a downer.
Oh my God, that last one. Astro Boy just gets worse and worse. I don't know where it's gonna end.
Tezuka X Hemingway.
Well, Astro Boy doesn't drink, but Daddy Walrus does.
Oh, goddamn.
But when I was a kid, the end was sad, and I felt it, and it was a visceral and heart-wrenching scene. But I don't know if it's age, but reading the end of that book again was a lot more gut-wrenching than it was when I was young. Even when I was young, I was reading it for the first time. I didn't know how it was going to end, and I didn't even know a lot about Hemingway, so I didn't really expect it to end badly.
Well, I think the reason that the ending is so gut-wrenching, right? It's like, look, first in the end of the big book, the whole book is separated into books. You'll be reading, you'll read a few chapters, and then it'll be like book 2. You read a few chapters, it'll say book 3, right?
I like books that do that well.
Yeah. So at the end of, I think, the second to last book is when they actually finally escape to Switzerland, right? And it's like, I was like, holy shit, they actually escaped to Switzerland. They had this big suspenseful, nighttime boat escape. and it actually works. They actually make it, and they're actually escape from the war and safe. And I was like, wow, that's sort of crazy. I thought that for sure that, it would like Switzerland would turn them over, or they'd have, because you think every story like that is always like you get to the customs and then you're fucked, or, you have to run away and, it's that kind of, but it wasn't. They actually got away. So then book 5 was, the final book was just so many chapters of having a good time in Switzerland. And all it was having a good time in Switzerland, having a good time, having a good time, having a good time. And all that having a good time is just setting you up to knock you over with the very final chapter, which is where all the bad things happen.
And it's just, that is a heart-wrenching scene because, again, there is no description. There is no point at which what the doctor is doing is explained, what anyone's seeing.
Well, I actually missed it a little bit, right? Because it's like when the doctor's like smacking the baby around, it's like I think there was like one sentence that sort of escaped me. I had to go back to catch it, where it's like, but the baby didn't cry or move or anything. And that was like one tiny sentence in like this, at the end of a paragraph. So it was like, if you don't read it slowly and carefully, you miss that, even though it's a really simple sentence.
But the fact that the exchanges,
and then they tell you on the next page, and then you go back and you're like, oh fuck,
we're just the dialogue of Catherine and him.
Yep.
And the dialogue is just it hits hard. Well, especially because Catherine is, she's the Hemingway hero, and she, even to the end, the fact that she really is not afraid of death, and it's not even that it's affected, she really is not.
Well, she was also hopped up on gas.
Yes, but even before that, she's in pain, but the whole book, she's aloof from life to a degree.
Well, I had a hard time a little bit, like actually trying to figure out like what the exact deal was, because there was a part way early in the book when they were, I think it was like just when he first got injured, somewhere around that part of the book, and they were talking to each other, and it seemed as if like they weren't actually in love, that they sort of both agreed to like pretend to be in love for each other.
What it was that originally, remember, he was going out whoring and he didn't care, and he thought of her as just a piece of tail. And the problem was she was a strong woman and she wasn't like women. Look how untraditional she is. The fact that he wants to marry her and she doesn't care about any of the formality or the church. She's an atheist. Like, none of the societal constraints of the time matter to her at all.
Yep.
She's very progressive. She's kind of an independent woman.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he thinks he's just having an affair with her right away, and she basically lets on. Remember, he's in the game in his head. He's like, he says, "I love you," and he in his head, he's like, "Yeah, I don't care, whatever."
Yeah, that's
and
the
then
part.
Later, he says it again. She's like, "You don't have to lie now. We're not having sex." And he was like, "What?"
Yeah,
but
so
I
that's
do.
why
She's
it was like.
off.
That's why it was like, are they really, or are they just?
No, watch the progression. She didn't really care at first, and he was kind of taken aback by this, and because of that, he starts to earnestly fall in love with her.
Oh, that may, yeah, I see.
Because notice
now.
how he didn't care, and then after this, like later on, he starts to miss her, and then he really wants to see her. He tries to see her every chance he gets.
Yep. Well, it's really, over the course of staying in the hospital injured, it went from, one to the other. And then when he was out at the war, there's that part where he's like, I can't. It was like he's like, I can't. He needs to think about something, but he's like, no, I can't think about her. That's like the worst thing I could think about. I'll just be torturing myself. And then the rest of the paragraph is him thinking about her. And I was like, wait, you just said don't think about her, and then the rest of that's all he does. So it's like, well, that's it then, isn't it?
Now, one thing I do want to point out, in case any of you missed a lot of this.
And then it's like he could have, when he's escaping from the war, he could have escaped a lot easier than the Switzerland escape, but he decides, like there was that one guy who was going to help him in the bar, but he's like, nope, I've got to go and find, Catherine. I can't be sitting around here. But
there are a lot of literary references that I hope you all will catch. I worry that you won't, but basically my advice to you is anytime through the book where you thought something sounded like prose or like someone was quoting something, they probably were. The characters quote stuff in character all the time throughout this whole book. Like the one that stood out particularly because I actually had to arrange the poem into music as the midterm in Music Theory 2 at RIT. But there's one point where he's laying in, he's cold and he's tired and he's wounded and he just wants to get away and he's thinking about Catherine. And in his head, he's thinking like, Western wind, blow, blah, 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 blah. And he basically intersperses the old Western wind poem. Western wind, when willst thou blow? The cold rain down will rain. Christ, all that stuff. And he's interposing that with basically, woman, space is one cold motherfucker. God damn it. I just want to be back.
Yeah.
But they quote poetry at each other more often than you might catch.
I mean, they're very, they're very smart people. A lot of the other people around them are like obviously not as smart. And it's like, they're like, he's reading all the newspapers all the time, and other people don't read. He reads when he talks to that the old man, like way at the end of the book. That was actually a cool scene where he plays billiards with a really old guy.
That old man is one of my favorite characters.
That old man was so awesome, even though he's in the book for like a second, right?
But you know.
Yep, you do know. And, the old man's like, well, have you read anything recently? He's like, well, I don't even know what's been out recently. I've been at this stupid war. And he's like, well, did you read this? He's like, no, I don't even know what that is. And he's like, did you read this? And he's like, oh, yeah, I read that. Something. It's because he read it when he was, sick, injured. And, it's like, not too many other people are you look at all these people in the war and others, and they're not, knowledgeable in those areas. It's,
But I guess, what else can I say other than I used to say that The Sun Also Rises was my favorite Hemingway novel. And part of that was just because I read that when I was much older. And I read Farewell to Arms when I was much younger. I think I actually find this to be my favorite Hemingway now. Of course, I'll have to read Sun Also Rises again to be sure.
Yeah, I sort of, Hemingway's weird. Like, half of it is like, it's totally awesome, and half of it is sort of, on me.
In what way? You really, I don't know, it draws you in this way that other styles of prose really can't do. It's a different experience of reading.
Yeah, it's just, like, when I read it, it's like, some of it is like, like I didn't feel ever, like, I read it and I wanted to keep reading, but at no point did I feel like, really excited about it. Like, yeah, oh, this is awesome. Or
I guess I did when I read it, both the first time and again.
Yeah, it's like I don't feel really strongly about it. I just, like I feel it, but it's never a strong feeling, So it's like I'm going along with it. I get it, and I kind of like it, but I'm not like, it's not my favorite thing ever.
Part of it's that for certain kinds of characters, Hemingway is able to express them and put them on paper and amazingly, ideas like a character who is disconnected from the world or a character who is alcoholic. Mm-hmm. Very few authors have put that on paper as well as he has, yeah. I think.
That's definitely the best part about the book is looking at all the characters. The thing is, when I read them, I end up just sort of, because I'm used to books and stories where everything actually matters. So I'm constantly thinking about all the things that were in the book, all the people, all the characters, all the other plot points, when really they're not coming back into it. That was just it. That was just some flavor back there. And I'm still thinking about the priest and his town and his parents that, didn't have the visitor that they were expecting and everything. That's totally out of the book, but I'm still thinking about it. So, I don't know if I'm supposed to be thinking about it or not, but it's sort of,
that's the sign that a book was good. It affects you beyond the reading.
Yep.
In some way. Mm-hmm. Even if you didn't enjoy it, even if a book is dangerous to your ideas or frightening or disturbing, if you're continuing to think about it after you've read it, that is the mark of a well-written and good book.
Yep.
Unless it's just so bad.
You were just thinking about how bad it was. You just can't stop thinking about how terrible. It was just so painful. It's like you tasted something real bad and you can't get the flavor out of your mouth. It was so terrible.
All right, but on that note, let's stop because I don't want to analyze the book. Any high school teacher can do that for you. And if you're trying to crib off of this for a book report, just read the book.
It's an easy book. It's not as easy as Earthsea, but it's Hemingway. This is not a difficult, and it's short. I read it in like 3 days, the equivalent of 3 days.
All right,
so we get to the next book.
All right, I guess we do.
Yeah. Do you want to, for the next book, do you want to continue a alternating pick, or do you want to do some other system? Or?
Do you have a pick in place? Do you have a pick in mind?
I got a boatload of picks.
I'll let you pick because I got to pick this one, but I warn you, my next pick will rely heavily upon what you pick now.
All right, I'm gonna pick.
What are you gonna pick?
I'll pick.
Gonna go back to fantasy and sci-fi.
My last choice was Earthsea, right?
Yes.
So that was the easy for the listeners pick, right? This time I'll do the force Rim to read it pick.
Don't pick Hawthorne. I swear to fucking God.
I don't think I've ever read any Hawthorne.
Really?
I don't know. What is Hawthorne written? Nathaniel Hawthorne, right?
Yes.
Yeah, what did he
Good
write?
God, Scott. Just go on.
Think I will pick... we'll do Kavalier and Clay.
Kavalier and Clay? All right.
Yes.
Emily approves. And on that note, I think we'll leave it. This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geek Nights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.